A lot of people seem to think that Gen Z is lazy, or that we don't like to work, or we lack discipline, or that we just want freedom without responsibility. But I don't think that's the whole story, honestly. I think a lot of young people are looking at the modern 9-to-5 world and realizing something older generations just never seemed to think or just say out loud, maybe. A lot of the system doesn't just ask for your effort, it asks for your life, your time, your energy, your creativity, and it oftentimes comes at the cost of your health, attention, and maybe even what could be considered your best years. If you're not careful, you slowly stop being a person with a calling and you start to become more of a tool, a cog in the system. And there's this anime character from the show Naruto. His name is Haku, and it's really a haunting character because he didn't live for himself. He lived for others. He wanted to be useful to someone else, but it wasn't in a noble way. It wasn't in the serving others like Christ serves. It wasn't that kind of good example. It was more just like a being taken advantage of and ignoring what you should be doing to please others, like that kind of thing. He didn't build an identity. He didn't ask, who am I becoming? He just asked, how can I serve someone else's mission? He never tried to follow his own mission, or, what God, or what he thought God had for him. He made another person his God, basically, is what I'm saying. And like I said, it might feel noble, that might seem noble, might feel mature, feel sacrificial, but like I said, it's not the sacrificial love of Christ. It's fake. But my point is, there's a danger hidden inside of that way of living and hidden inside of that story, because your worth being built on being useful, you'll accept almost anything, and that's just to keep the feeling of being valuable. You're letting others control your life. And honestly, that's where a lot of people are right now. And I've felt that way very recently, really. And we don't hate work. We just hate the feeling of being consumed by something that has no love for us. And we don't really care about it either. Like, it doesn't feel like what we're meant to do, or it feels pointless even sometimes. We hate waking up tired and going somewhere we don't even believe in, doing things that we feel don't connect to our greater purpose. And then when we do get home, we're too drained to build a real life, or the real life that we want. I know in my case, I hate that I have to give my most productive or strongest hours of my day to something I do not care about whatsoever. And they don't care about me either. So I don't feel guilty that I don't care about it. There are some people at my work that do care about me, but I think they care too much about work. Just because they do care about me, does that mean I have to just not live my life anymore? And then on top of that, you know that if you were to disappear for a week, they would just replace you. So, taking all of that into consideration, it's not just having a job, it's total spiritual erosion. And this is where the conversation gets deeper than just money. Because work itself is not the enemy. God created work. Adam and Eve in the garden were meant to work the garden. Work is good. Man is supposed to work. I know myself, for example, I can hardly sit still. That's probably a problem in itself. But I need to be doing something, and to a degree at least, that's okay. That's how it's supposed to be. I'm not lazy. How could I be? I went from minimum wage, my first ever job, working as like a receptionist kind of thing, and Within 1.5 years, I'm full-time salary at that same company. It's my first ever job. Went from minimum wage to full-time salary in less than 2 years. I don't think that's normal. I think that's exceptional. Not sure. It's what I've been told. Like I said, it was my first job, so it's not like I have any experience, that would tell me otherwise, but people have told me that that's impressive. And I've always been a hard worker, even whenever I played soccer, and I wanted to go pro for a long time, like my whole childhood. I was always the hardest worker, and I was always considered the hardest worker. It wasn't just me, like, oh, I'm the hardest worker, like I had a big head, like some delusional guy, like, these wannabe self-improvement people. They're like, I'm on the stair stepper at 12:05 a.m. I don't see nobody around me. It's like, yeah, well, that's just stupid. Like, that doesn't mean you're special. You just are up late at night and you happen to be at the gym at that time. Other people are at the gym at other times. Like, that doesn't mean anything. So it's not like that. Like, I have actual, I guess proof, for lack of a better word. Like, I'm a pretty hard worker. So, not to go on a crazy rant, but it's not that we don't want to work or we don't want to work hard. We just don't want to sell our souls to a job. We want to live life, because that's what God put us here for. He put us here to live life, not to just float and be used. And yes, you can live life in the job, but when it becomes your life, some people, that might be their purpose from God. God might need you in that job forever. And if you're in the job now, he doesn't make mistakes. You're in the job for a reason. What the reason is, I don't know. And whether or not you're supposed to stay there, I don't know. But that's between you and him. But becoming a slave to it is different. Slavery happens when your labor is detached from love, truth, and calling. When you're no longer working from identity, but for identity. When you're no longer offering your gifts, but selling your soul for survival. That's why so many people feel angry, numb, and exhausted. I, for one, felt all three of those things for a very long period of time. And this is not because you're weak, but because deep down, you're made for more than being a machine or a cog in the machine. And that's what Haku never did understand. He always had to find his value in someone else, in other people. He treated a man like his God, and he believed that his existence only mattered if he could serve another person's mission. A lot of other people are doing the same thing right now. Or, like I said, they're just trying to survive. But when you follow Jesus, your life is not a survival game. Jesus comes from a place of abundance. He says in Matthew, look at the birds of the air. They neither sow nor reap, but your Father in heaven cares for them or feeds them. How much more will he care for you? I think that's really all you have to know from the Bible. That comes from Jesus' mouth. People are living for their bosses that they don't even admire. Systems that they don't believe in. Schedules that hollow them out. And paychecks that barely keep them alive. And then people call it adulting. They normalize this. But Jesus offers something radically different. Jesus never taught that your value comes from your productivity. He never said, earn your worth. He never said, become useful enough, and then you'll matter. He said you are loved first, chosen first, and seen first. In Christ, your identity is not something you clock into. It's something you receive. And once a man understands that, everything changes. Because now he can work without worshiping work. He can serve without becoming a slave. He can build without losing himself. He can sacrifice without disappearing. And that doesn't mean every 9 to 5 is evil. It doesn't mean every young person should quit tomorrow either. Like I said, God has you there for a reason. You have to have the discernment on whether or not you need to leave, and if you've fulfilled the purpose of why he has you there, if you've learned the lesson, whatever it is. But take this from it. You should be very careful about giving your whole life to something that only knows how to use you. Because you keep doing that long enough, and you may wake up one day with money in your account, a title on your resume, and no sense of who you are. And that is the trap. That is the tragic story of Haku that we want to avoid. We don't want to avoid work, but worshiping usefulness, living as a tool instead of a son. So no, the answer for Gen Z is not laziness, to just be lazy and do nothing. And it's not just to rebel for the sake of rebellion. The answer is to stop asking, how do I become more useful? And instead start asking, what did God actually make for me? Because there's a difference between having a job and giving your life away. There's a difference between discipline and quiet self-betrayal. There's a difference between serving others and becoming a work slave. And if you belong to Jesus, then your life is too sacred to be reduced to just output. You weren't made to be consumed. You were made to be called. And if you're trying to build your life with more strength, clarity, and direction, I did put a few simple tools in the description that can help you grow in your mission. Don't become so useful to the system that you forget who you are to God. Because a man who knows he's loved doesn't have to live like a slave.